spiritually awake. People often have fewer friends, not because they dislike others, but because their entire inner landscape transforms as they grow. Awakening is not just a shift in mindset, it is a shift in vibration, a shift in how they experience reality, energy, silence, and connection. Before awakening, a person may feel comfortable in large groups, social circles, and busy interactions because they are operating from the surface of life. But the moment they begin to wake up to deeper truths, their sensitivity heightens. They start to feel things they previously ignored, notice energies they once overlooked, and recognize patterns in people that they previously accepted without question. This heightened awareness makes them more selective, not out of superiority, but out of necessity. When someone begins to understand themselves at a deeper level, they also begin to understand the people around them with surprising clarity. They see the difference between someone who truly cares and someone who simply wants company. They sense the subtle tensions, hidden motives, emotional burdens, and unspoken expectations that many friendships quietly carry. Most people mix friendships with distraction, ego validation, or habitual attachment. A spiritually awake person cannot function in such dynamics anymore because their inner peace becomes too valuable to trade for temporary comfort. They no longer feel drawn to noise, drama, gossip, or meaningless conversations. What used to entertain them now feels heavy. What used to feel normal now feels draining. Even social environments that once brought excitement can suddenly feel overwhelming because awakening creates an inner shift that no longer aligns with superficial engagement. They begin to crave authenticity, depth, and sincerity. They desire a space where they can be fully themselves, without masks, without roles, without filters. Unfortunately, such spaces are rare. And so are the people who can hold that level of presence. Another reason spiritually awake people have fewer friends is because they value energy more than words. They can sense when someone's presence is chaotic, anxious, jealous, insincere, or ungrounded. They do not judge it. They simply cannot absorb it. Their nervous system no longer tolerates unnecessary emotional noise. They prefer fewer interactions that nourish their soul instead of many interactions that exhaust their spirit. They choose quality over quantity because their awareness teaches them that one authentic connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. This selectiveness is not coldness, it is maturity. It is emotional clarity. Awakening teaches them that peace is priceless, that boundaries are sacred, and that energy is contagious. They begin to protect their inner world the same way one protects a precious garden. Not everyone is allowed in, not because others are unworthy, but because not everyone brings light, harmony, or respect to that space. Ultimately, spiritually awake people have fewer friends because they are no longer searching for completion outside themselves. They no longer need crowds to feel valued, nor attention to feel alive. Their contentment comes from within, and in that inner contentment, only a few genuine souls feel naturally aligned with them. As spiritually awake individuals continue their inner journey, they discover something profound. Silence becomes more nourishing than small talk. What once felt like pleasant chatter now feels empty. And what used to be social excitement now feels like noise around the edges of their consciousness. This is not because they suddenly dislike people. It is because awakening changes the very texture of their attention. Their mind no longer craves distraction, it craves presence. Their heart no longer seeks approval, it seeks authenticity. Their spirit no longer wants movement just for the sake of movement, it wants meaning. In this deeper state of awareness, they realize how much of everyday conversation is rooted in avoidance, avoiding feelings, avoiding truth, avoiding stillness. Many people speak not to connect but to escape themselves. They talk to fill gaps, silence discomfort, or maintain appearances. But an awakened person finds these patterns exhausting because they live from the inside out, not the outside in. They have tasted the richness of inner stillness. And once someone experiences the fullness of silence, the emptiness of small talk becomes obvious. This change also alters how they show up socially. They no longer feel the need to participate in forced interactions, pretend to be interested, or entertain conversations that circle around complaints, gossip, or superficial matters. They find themselves quietly withdrawing from environments where authenticity is replaced by performance, places where people talk more than they listen, compete more than they connect, and hide more than they reveal. As they awaken, they begin to value depth over distraction. A simple, honest moment with one real person becomes far more meaningful than hours spent in a crowd. A conversation that touches the soul becomes more fulfilling than dozens of exchanges that only skim the surface. They start yearning for spaces where they can talk about what actually matters: growth, healing, consciousness, truth, purpose, presence, love. But because such spaces are rare, they naturally engage less, speak less, and choose carefully where they invest their energy. Another shift that happens is an acute sensitivity to social environments. Places that are loud, chaotic, or filled with fragmented energy begin to feel overwhelming. People who constantly complain, argue, or spread negativity drain their emotional reserves. Situations that once felt normal now feel misaligned with their new state of being. This sensitivity isn't a flaw, it is a sign of awakening. Their inner system becomes finely tuned, like an instrument that can now detect emotional frequencies that others overlook. Awakened individuals also lose interest in maintaining the social masks they once wore just to fit in. They no longer want to exaggerate enthusiasm, fake politeness, or mirror behaviors to gain acceptance. They prefer realness, even if it means fewer interactions. They choose honesty over popularity, presence over performance, truth over comfort. Slowly, they realize something powerful. They don't need to be everywhere anymore. They don't need to say yes to every invitation. They don't need to force connections or chase belonging. They feel complete in their own presence. Silence becomes their friend. Solitude becomes their sanctuary. And when they do speak, it comes from a place of clarity, sincerity, and depth that only awakening can bring. Awake individuals value authenticity, emotional honesty, and mutual growth in a way that most people simply cannot understand. Once someone begins to awaken spiritually, the entire foundation of how they relate to others transforms. They no longer desire friendships based on convenience, social obligation, shared boredom, or habitual attachment. They want something much deeper, connections that nourish the soul rather than distract the mind. Spiritually awake people are no longer interested in relationships where they have to hide parts of themselves. They no longer want to shrink their truth to keep someone comfortable or pretend to be someone they are not just to maintain harmony. Authenticity becomes their compass, the guiding force behind every connection they choose to keep. They crave conversations where vulnerability is welcome, where silence is respected, and where both people feel safe being exactly who they are. This is one of the biggest reasons they end up with fewer friends. Authenticity requires courage, and not everyone is ready for that level of openness. Many people avoid emotional honesty because it requires confronting their fears, insecurities, and unhealed wounds. But awakened people cannot avoid those things anymore. Awakening has already brought them face to face with themselves. They've looked into their own shadows. They've questioned their own beliefs. They've walked through their own pain and emerged more conscious. Naturally, they seek others who can meet them on that level. They also value mutual growth. They want relationships that encourage evolution, not stagnation. They want people around them who challenge them to become better, who inspire clarity rather than confusion, who offer support without judgment, and who are willing to walk their own path of healing. They can no longer stay in relationships where truth is avoided or where emotional responsibility is replaced by blame, manipulation, or denial. Their soul rejects such dynamics instantly because awakening teaches them that real connection can only exist in truth. Awake individuals also see through people more easily. They can sense when someone is pretending, when someone is hiding resentment, when someone is using them for emotional dumping, or when someone's presence comes with invisible strings attached. They can feel the difference between genuine care and polite performance. Their intuition becomes razor sharp, and because of this, they no longer tolerate fake friendships or half-hearted connections. They would rather sit alone in peace than be surrounded by people who cannot meet them honestly. Another powerful reason they have fewer friends is that awakened people no longer chase validation. They do not need to be admired, accepted, or praised. They do not need attention to feel worthy. Their sense of value comes from within. When you no longer need anything from others, you also become free from the relationships that were based on those needs. Many friendships dissolve naturally because they were built on unconscious dependency rather than conscious connection. In the end, spiritually awake individuals choose depth over numbers, alignment over attachment, and truth over comfort. They don't want crowds, they want resonance. They don't want popularity, they want presence. And in that quiet choosing, they discover that even one real soul is worth more than 100 shallow friendships. For spiritually awake individuals, solitude is not loneliness. Solitude becomes a sacred space, a sanctuary where the mind settles, the heart breathes, and the spirit aligns with its own truth. In solitude, they reconnect with themselves in ways that the noise of the world never allows. What most people interpret as isolation is for them a homecoming, an intimate state where clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces tension, and presence replaces distraction. Awake people understand something profoundly. The deepest connections are born from inner stillness. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, demands, and expectations, you lose touch with your own inner voice. But when you sit in silence, your real self begins to speak. Spiritually awakened individuals have learned to hear that voice, and they protect it fiercely. This is why they don't feel the need to maintain large social circles. They no longer rely on external company to fill internal emptiness, because awakening has dissolved that emptiness. They no longer seek validation from others because they have found acceptance within themselves. They no longer fear being alone because solitude is no longer a void. It is a powerful source of renewal. And yet, when they do connect with someone, it is not casual or accidental. It is a connection built on resonance, not routine. Awake people look for others who share the same frequency. Individuals who understand silence, who value honesty, who live with an open heart, and who seek meaning rather than entertainment. Such connections are rare, which is why awakened people may appear alone, but are never truly lonely. In fact, they find more truth in one genuine relationship than in a crowd of acquaintances. Their bonds are deeper, quieter, and more authentic, built not on need but on alignment. They are uninterested in friendships based on convenience, gossip, or emotional dependency. Instead, they want relationships where both individuals can grow, reflect, and inspire one another. They want interactions that feel like nourishment rather than emotional labor. Awake individuals also understand that not everyone is meant to stay. Some people come into our lives as lessons, teaching us boundaries, resilience, or self-respect. Others come as mirrors, revealing our patterns, wounds, or blind spots. And a few rare souls come as companions, those who walk beside us, not because they need us, but because they understand us. Spiritual awakening teaches them to let go of relationships that no longer resonate, without guilt and without hostility. They have learned that releasing misaligned connections is not loss, it is liberation. Ultimately, Having fewer friends allows awakened people to protect their peace, honor their intuition, and stay aligned with their path. It opens space for deeper creativity, stronger intuition, and a richer inner life. They no longer measure their worth by how many people surround them, but by how deeply they connect with themselves, with truth, with life. So spiritually awake individuals have fewer friends. It is not a sign of emptiness, but a sign of clarity. It means they choose authenticity over approval, resonance over noise, and inner freedom over social obligation. And in that choice, they discover a life that feels peaceful, meaningful, and profoundly real.